Hey guys, Kanji here once again, how you doing? Today we have another concept art video that we'll be looking at. Toriyama's concept art for Mr. Popo and covering the design he almost had. But with that being said, first things first, I think it's important that I preface this video by saying that in this video we'll be looking at some designs from the mid to late 80s that Toriyama had made for Mr. Popo. And I'm 100% sure that anybody watching this video already knows what Mr. Popo looks like. Mr. Popo's design of a black genie could definitely be seen as offensive. And at the time of his design, the world was, let's be fair, it was a little different. And whilst I'm not making any excuses for Toriyama, I do want to say that I firmly believe that there was no intention to offend, but more just artistically represent what he was imagining. However, if you think you're likely to be offended by the topics discussed in this video, I totally understand, and I won't blame you for choosing not to watch. But I felt it only fair that I mention this before we go into the design of Mr. Popo, because in reality I think it's relatively easy to see his train of thought when we look at the designs. It is 100% speculative because it's based on the drawings provided, and there very well could be designs that he didn't put on the sheet, nor maybe were included in the Dragon Ball secret files, which is where these came from. But given what we have, I think it's fairly easy to see how we ended up with the design for Mr. Popo that we currently have. But due to the fact that it is speculative, there could be missing images and context, I would like to keep the comments and the discussions regarding the drawings as clean and as inclusive as possible, so please bear that in mind when you're commenting down below. Thank you. Anyway, with that being said, let's have a look at the concept art for Mr. Popo. So, it starts off as like a chick with like a fish fin on its head, which I find quite interesting. This was definitely a period of time where Toriyama really loved incorporating animals into his artwork, be it Dragon Quest or Dragon Ball. He certainly does it less so these days. Clearly he decided that he didn't really like the chick look, maybe it just didn't quite encompass the look he was going for, maybe it just didn't capture his imagination the right way, because other than the side profile of the chicken below, he doesn't really refer back to it. Instead, he gets fully invested in the fish-like design, and decides to repeat that style for a while, which I can understand because the fish does look kinda cool, I'm not gonna lie. What's interesting with this design, and I'm sure any of you might have actually already picked up on this, but it's clear this is where Toei got their design for the fish fighter that Goku fights in the Otherworld tournament before he fights Paikuhan. The fight that involves turning the ring into water, which I actually have to say is one of the more interesting fights in the whole series, because it was really imaginative and it actually felt like it took some of the fighting back to its roots, where it was more about the abilities than the raw strength of the fighters, seeing as the fishy fighter wasn't actually all that strong. There's also another fighter in that tournament that clearly gets his design from a concept art piece of Cell, but again, we'll get into that in another video. But it is interesting to see that Toei were dipping into the Toriyama rejected characters to pick out their fighters, because this isn't the last time that Toei do it. Having said that, nor is it the last time that Toriyama himself does it. The fish design has a really interesting look, it's really unique, so it is actually a shame that they didn't use this look for a more regularly recurring character. One of the few designs that doesn't seem to have the recycled design, for instance, with the ears that every main villain in Dragon Ball Z seems to have, with the protruding square holes on the side of their heads. Gotta make note of the eyes here as well, as it seems like it really did bite into the idea of him looking high and tranquil, which whilst not looking that high, Mr. Popo always has had the vacant and tranquil look on his face, so we can see that that's possibly where the idea came from, that seemed to stay or be adopted into the expression that Mr. Popo has. In fact, actually, if you stare at this fish face, you can still hear the voice of either the dub or sub version of Mr. Popo coming from his fishy design. The other interesting thing about it is the clear early look at the gi from Kaio-sama, or that like King Kai would end up wearing. Okay, yeah, it's blank, but you can see that this is probably one of the first times that Toriyama went, huh, that might make an interesting outfit for a character. It would be easy to assume and wonder whether Toriyama would actually recycle the entire fish design for King Kai, but judging by the designs we have and that we see in the designs for King Kai, which I'll cover in another video, it's clear that that wasn't really the case. The other thing I've noticed based on these designs is how similar to the design of Tambourine the fish-like design is. It has the same spiked fin mohawk, the same scaly pattern on the skin, and the same fish lips and even the same sunken-in eye bags. The only difference is the lack of wings and the eyes. But the eyes are the same as Piccolo's other demon spawn, Piano. I wonder if originally the idea floated around to have him be Kami's servant that was spat up, similarly to using the poker pen technique. This creature would accompany him, much like Piano did to King Piccolo, and have him be like a little fat wingless tambourine. This would have potentially spoiled Kami being a Namekian, however, and further the reveal of him being half of Piccolo. Ultimately anyway, this wasn't the direction they went in, so possibly having the thought of the Pokepen technique being a demonic technique already, or it would have raised the question as to why Kami hadn't spat up any more children to help fight Piccolo's demon clan originally. An interesting comparison nevertheless. He then messes around with the idea of making another Asian-styled character, perhaps of Arabic descent, and then considers the turban as which we all know that Popo ends up with, so we can see that perhaps this is where he started to consider the type of genie look. Perhaps he'd just been watching or reading Aladdin or something, perhaps not the Disney version because I don't think it was out back then, but I mean he does like to dip into other forms of culture and other forms of movies and all sorts of stuff to get his ideas for a lot of his characters, especially considering the fact that Dragon Ball basically just started as Journey to the West. He might have actually decided against this look because it seems like a little too much like one of the villagers depicted to be from Nam's village, and considering that arc wasn't that long ago in terms of when this would have been being designed, that may have had something to do with it. He then seems to return back to the fish design, and whether it's in poor taste or whatever, gives the fish a Hitler moustache and an afro. Whether it's just for a bit of fun, we can see where he possibly gets the idea to go full genie. Here he seems to readopt the turban and the vacant expression, and he adds them to the design of this genie, and we can see how he ended up with the design of Mr Popo that we have today. It's funny though that he puffed his cheeks out to make him look more human-like, because had he kept the no-neck look, I wonder if it would have been quite as controversial, because, you know, let's be honest, it looks a lot more like a ghost or like a genie without the neck. But either way. What do you guys think anyway? Should we have had this fish design for Mr. Popo, or is it better the way that it is? If Dragon Ball is ever being remade from the ground up, because let's face it, in the world we live in, people can't seem to sit still for 5 minutes without needing a remake of the thing that was just made, should they go back and use the fish design so it's less controversial? No, I don't know. Personally, I think it's probably fine the way it is. I'm more of the kind of guy that prefers to leave things the way that they are. They're more indicative and representative of the time of which that they came from. But let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Leave a like if you like the video, and remember to subscribe if you like the content and you want to see more content like the concept design video series. Either way, thanks for watching, and until next time, bye!